Rejection is painful. It strikes like an unexpected blow, leaving a wound in our pride. It serves as a stark reminder that no matter how much effort we put in, we will not always be chosen. It fills our minds with questions that have no immediate answers, leaving us with an unsettling feeling of not being good enough. We are left standing at the edge of self-doubt, tempted to hold on to someone who has already let us go. But what if rejection is not a punishment, but rather an open door? What if, instead of dragging us down, it holds the power to reveal profound truths about ourselves? Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, taught that every external experience is a reflection of something within us. It is not the loss itself that wounds us the most, but rather what that loss awakens in our psyche. Rejection forces us to confront our shadows, our insecurities, and our deeply rooted fear of not being valuable if we are not wanted. But beyond the pain, rejection presents a unique opportunity, one that invites us to undergo a profound transformation. Rejection is not merely an unfortunate event. It is a rite of passage, a challenge that urges us to dismantle the false structures of the ego, to release the masks we have worn for validation, and to rediscover the true self, an identity that does not depend on anyone's approval to exist. And that is exactly what you will learn today. The symbolic wisdom of life. Rejection as a reflection of the self for Jung. Rejection is never random. Life operates with symbolic intelligence, and every external event has its roots within the individual's inner world. If someone feels utterly devastated by rejection, the real pain does not stem from losing the other person. It arises from the confrontation with their own unresolved wounds. It is not the absence of the other that weighs us down. It is what that absence reveals about ourselves. When we experience rejection, a powerful psychological mechanism is triggered, forcing us to face the hidden parts of our being, the aspects we often prefer to ignore. Perhaps the person who has been rejected has built an identity around being desired, validated, or needed. When this identity crumbles, it exposes an inner emptiness, one that had previously been concealed by the illusion of external acceptance. In many cases, rejection reactivates deep-seated wounds from childhood. Perhaps the individual learned from an early age that love and approval were conditions for their worth. Maybe they came to believe that they had to be enough to be loved. When someone now says no to them, their entire sense of self-worth feels like it is crumbling. Jung would suggest that this pain is not something to run from, but rather an opportunity to look inward and understand where this deep need for validation originates. When rejection becomes a repeating pattern, a message from the psyche. If rejection becomes a recurring experience in someone's life, it is not mere coincidence. It is a message from the unconscious. The psyche is trying to bring something to the surface, something unresolved that needs attention. The person who has been rejected must ask themselves, why am I seeking validation from others to confirm my worth? Why do I hold on to the belief that being accepted by someone else defines my identity? Jung would encourage them to approach their pain with curiosity rather than despair. He would ask, where does this feeling truly come from? When in your past have you felt this way before? What part of you is desperately seeking acceptance? Within these answers lies the key to transforming rejection from a source of suffering into a path of self-discovery and growth. Breaking the ego to find authenticity. It is the ego that cries out for revenge. It is the ego that demands explanations, that desperately seeks to prove its worth. It is the voice that whispers, without their acceptance, you are nothing. But Jung understood that true growth only begins when the ego collapses, when the individual is left with no choice but to face their authentic self. This deeper self does not depend on external approval to exist. It does not need to be chosen to feel whole. Rejection, then, is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of an awakening. It is an invitation to step beyond the illusions we have built and embrace a self-worth that is rooted in something far more powerful than fleeting validation. When someone experiences rejection, they are faced with two choices: to resist reality or to surrender to it. Resisting means becoming obsessed with the other person, over-analyzing every detail, questioning what could have been done differently, and searching for ways to reverse their decision. This only serves to feed the ego and its insatiable need for control, reinforcing the illusion that personal worth is dependent on external validation. On the other hand, surrendering to reality does not mean giving up or admitting defeat. It means embracing rejection for what it truly is, a decision made by another person that does not define one's intrinsic value. The ego fears rejection because it perceives it as a mortal wound, an attack on its very existence. It cannot tolerate the idea of being inadequate, of not being chosen, of not being validated. However, the true source of pain is not rejection itself, but the crumbling of the identity built around external approval. A person who defines themselves through the acceptance of others will feel as though their very existence loses meaning when that validation is withheld. And yet, this is precisely where transformation begins. Swiss psychoanalyst Carl Jung would argue that the most powerful response to rejection is not seeking acceptance again, but transcending the very need for it. There is no greater power than that which arises when someone no longer depends on external validation to feel complete. True transformation occurs when an individual stops seeing rejection as a personal attack and starts perceiving it as an opportunity for liberation. It is not about eliminating the ego, but about observing it with clarity and understanding its role in the psyche. It means detaching oneself from the need for approval and recognizing that the true self is not defined by how others perceive it. When the ego loses its grip, a deep sense of peace, wholeness, and emotional independence emerges. Rejection ceases to be a wound and instead becomes a gift, a chance to reconnect with one's own authenticity. This is the process of turning pain into individuation, a journey towards self-actualization. From a Jungian perspective, rejection is not merely an event that wounds self-esteem. It is an invitation to self-discovery. At first glance, it may seem like a painful blow to one's identity, but at a deeper level, it is a call to introspection. Rather than remaining trapped in the suffering, Jung would encourage individuals to integrate their pain, to turn inward and ask themselves, what part of me is being called into the light? Rejection serves a symbolic function. It is not just a no from another person, it is a mirror reflecting the internal work that needs to be done. Perhaps it reveals that one has been living to please others, molding themselves to fit external expectations rather than being true to their essence. Perhaps it exposes the fact that self-esteem has been tethered to validation, making one feel worthless in its absence. Or maybe it shows that one has been neglecting their own potential, seeking outside what should be cultivated within. Individuation is the process of reconciling with oneself, of integrating the shadows, of building a strong and authentic identity. Jung would argue that the ultimate goal is not to be accepted by others, but to be accepted by oneself. When identity is built upon external approval, any form of rejection can trigger a crisis. But when an individual has done the deep inner work and cultivated a solid sense of self-worth, no external opinion has the power to shake their foundation. Transforming pain into individuation means shifting the perception of rejection from a sign of inadequacy to a sign of direction. It is not an indication that something is lacking within, but rather a guide towards something greater. Instead of lamenting rejection, one can use it as a stepping stone toward personal freedom, toward becoming whole, and toward embracing a life where self-worth is no longer dictated by anyone else's choices, but by one's own unshakable inner truth. The lack of external acceptance is not a curse, nor is it a punishment. It is, in fact, an opportunity. It is an invitation to ask oneself a crucial question. Am I living in alignment with my true self, or am I merely trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for me? Rejection is often perceived as a form of suffering, an obstacle, or even an attack on one's worth. But this perspective is flawed. In reality, rejection is not a wall that blocks the way forward. Rather, it is a signpost redirecting us toward a path that is more authentic to who we truly are. It is not an indication of personal failure, but rather a reminder that true love, real acceptance, and deep validation must always come from within before they can ever be fully experienced externally. When individuation, the process of becoming one's most authentic self, is complete, rejection ceases to be a source of pain. Instead, it becomes a stepping stone, a necessary phase in the evolution of the self. It is no longer seen as a threat, but as an opportunity to strengthen one's identity. Those who embrace this truth find that they are no longer shaken by the opinions, judgments, or dismissals of others, because they have built an unwavering sense of self that does not require external validation to remain whole. Carl Jung spoke of detachment not as an act of emotional coldness, but as an expression of profound wisdom. Many misunderstand detachment, believing it to be synonymous with indifference or apathy. But true detachment is neither of these things. It is not the absence of love, nor is it resignation to a life devoid of connection. Rather, it is the ability to let go without allowing the soul to be torn apart in the process. To practice detachment is to understand that no relationship, no matter how intense or meaningful, defines the very essence of who we are. It is the recognition that our worth is not dependent on the presence, approval, or validation of another person. This realization is the first step toward liberation from unnecessary suffering. When someone experiences rejection, the initial reaction is often one of deep loss. It can feel as though something incredibly valuable has been stripped away. But Jung would encourage a deeper inquiry. Am I truly grieving the loss of this person? Or am I mourning the idea of myself that I had constructed in relation to them? This question reveals a hidden truth. In most cases, what we miss is not so much the person themselves, but rather the version of our identity that we associated with them. The pain is not solely about their absence, but about the reflection of our self-worth that we believed they provided. When we lose a relationship, we often feel as though we have lost a part of ourselves. But this is an illusion. The self remains intact, regardless of who chooses to stay or leave. Attachment is born from a false belief the idea that without someone else, we are incomplete. It stems from the assumption that love is only real when it is reciprocated, that external validation is proof of our own worth. But these are illusions, created by the ego's need for security. Detachment does not mean ceasing to love. Rather, it means learning to love in a way that is free from possession, expectation, or dependency. It is an understanding that love does not have to be exchanged in equal measure in order to be real. The highest form of love is one that exists in freedom, independent of whether or not it is returned in the same way. To detach is not to stop feeling, but to stop suffering as a result of imposed expectations. It is to allow life to flow without resistance, accepting what comes and releasing what leaves. It is a profound acceptance of the natural rhythms of existence, where everything has its time and place. Detachment does not strip life of meaning. It amplifies it by teaching us that nothing truly essential can ever be lost. What belongs to us, in the truest sense, will never depend on another person's will. Each rejection, then, is not an end, but a redirection. Nothing is truly lost when we let go, because what is authentically ours will never require force, struggle, or desperation to remain in our lives. When a person learns to love without clinging, they come to understand a fundamental truth. Their value was never in the hands of someone else. Their essence remains untouched, even when others choose to walk away. And in that realization, they uncover their greatest power, the ability to exist, whole and complete, within themselves. To Jung, rejection was not a catastrophe, but a necessary demolition. Yes, something may have crumbled, but only so that something stronger, something more aligned with the true self, can be built in its place. It is not a failure, it is a pivotal moment, a turning point. When the ego is shattered, the true self is given the space to emerge. What appears to be an ending is, in truth, the beginning of something far greater, a transformation that is deeper, more meaningful, and more aligned with the soul's true nature. Rejection is not a final verdict on one's worth, but an open doorway to authenticity. It is an invitation to stop seeking validation from the outside world and instead to cultivate a foundation of self-love that is unshakable. This moment of rejection, painful though it may be, holds within it a profound opportunity, the chance to ask oneself the most important questions of all. Who am I when I am no longer defined by another's approval? What is my worth beyond what others think of me? And in finding the answers to these questions, one discovers the greatest liberation of all. The realization that nothing external can ever diminish the light that already exists within. It is within that space of uncertainty where true self-esteem is forged, because it ceases to depend on the gaze of others. Many people desperately cling to relationships, situations, or roles that no longer belong to them, simply out of fear of feeling empty. They resist change, not because they are truly fulfilled, but because they dread the unknown, the silence that follows when external validation fades. However, Carl Jung would argue that this emptiness is not something to be feared, but rather something to be explored. Within that apparent void lies an immense opportunity, an open space where one can rediscover themselves, reconnect with the forgotten corners of their psyche, and cultivate an identity that remains unshaken by rejection or the indifference of others. This space, though intimidating, offers the possibility of true inner growth. When the layers of external validation are stripped away, what remains is the raw essence of the self, waiting to be acknowledged, understood, and strengthened. Jung would remind us that rejection is not an obstacle, it is a teacher. It is a force that compels us to move beyond the need for external approval and instead find intrinsic value in our own existence. Every moment of exclusion, every instance of being overlooked, every door that closes in our faces is an invitation to deepen our self-awareness. Rejection forces us to detach from the illusion that our worth is dictated by others, urging us instead to recognize that our significance has always existed within us, independent of any external validation. The paradox is that when a person no longer needs to be accepted, that is when they can connect with others in the most authentic way. They no longer seek relationships out of lack or incompleteness, but rather out of a sense of wholeness. They stop searching for someone to complete them and instead welcome those who can walk beside them as equals. This shift transforms rejection from a source of pain into a powerful reminder. True strength is not found in being chosen by others, but in choosing oneself. The rebirth after rejection. This is the moment where one transcends the wounds of the past and reclaims their own power. Instead of viewing rejection as a curse, it can be embraced as a pivotal turning point, a threshold between dependence and true emotional independence. Because in the end, rejection is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of a deeper, more profound journey towards self-mastery. Carl Jung would see this as a rite of passage, a transformative moment that separates the ego from the deeper self. It is not a punishment, nor a sign of failure, but rather a profound test that compels one to look inward and realize that true worth has never depended on anyone else. Rejection shakes the very foundations of the psyche, dismantling the illusions that the ego had carefully constructed. For many, this process is painful, as they have built their identity around external validation, around the need to be chosen, around the mistaken belief that their value is dictated by others. But when this illusion shatters, a new and greater possibility emerges, a rebirth from authenticity. The one who has been rejected now faces a rare and powerful opportunity to rebuild themselves with a heightened sense of awareness. They can choose not to cling to suffering, not to define themselves by the wound, and not to perpetuate the belief that their happiness is dependent on external validation. For the first time, they can truly ask themselves, who am I beyond the opinions of others? This is the essence of true rebirth. It is not an act of revenge, nor a desperate attempt to prove oneself worthy of acceptance. It is an internal awakening, a deep realization that personal worth has never been in the hands of others. It is the moment when one stops begging for recognition and instead begins to construct an unshakable identity. When the ego crumbles, what remains is pure essence, and that essence is indestructible. It does not need to be approved, loved, or acknowledged in order to exist in its fullest expression. In this state, rejection ceases to be a wound to one's pride and instead becomes a revelation. No one can take away what truly belongs to the self. Rebirth after rejection does not mean becoming hardened or shutting oneself off from others. Rather, it means transcending the need to be accepted and discovering that true power has always resided within. Because the one who chooses themselves no longer fears rejection. If you found this perspective insightful and wish to explore more about the deep psychology of Carl Gustav Jung, I invite you to continue this journey with us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share it with others who might need this message. Until the next video. Let's say it without sugarcoating it, but without raising our voice. What you're about to hear isn't a scream, it's a whisper that pierces deeper than any noise ever could. Don't open your eyes just yet. Don't look around searching for answers. Look within, because right there, in the darkest corner of your mind, the place no one enters, the place you yourself fear to peek into, that's where this story begins. There, hidden beneath layers of appearances and silence, echoes a single question you've been avoiding for far too long. Who are you when they strip away the mask of composure? When that forced smile finally collapses? When tension bursts inside you like a silent explosion and no one even notices? What remains of you? Have you lived your life believing that control is strength? That calm is something you learn from self-help books or pretty quotes on social media? If so, you've been misled. True control isn't something you study or rehearse. It awakens. It reveals itself in the moments that test your very core. And for many, it never does, because keeping calm isn't a technique. It's a trial. It's standing at the edge of the abyss, looking straight into the chaos without blinking. And here's the strange part. You have no idea how often you've been right on that edge. You've walked the razor's edge of your own sanity more times than you could count, completely unaware. It's those arguments that don't end in shouting, but in endless distances. It's those loaded glances, heavy with restrained rage. It's the silence, where everything is being said, and yet nothing is spoken. Carl Jung didn't speak of calm as a simple virtue. To him, it was a sign, an echo from the soul that has embraced its own shadow. Because while you run from conflict, there's a part of you that feeds it, that craves it. And if I'm being honest, that part of you isn't asleep. It's wide awake, very awake, but you pretend. You pretend to be blind, deaf, neutral. You convince yourself that nothing touches you, that everything can be reasoned, that you're an island in the middle of the storm. But Jung knew no one is an island. We are all battlefields, and right now, you're losing the war without even realizing it. Do you want to know why you explode when someone interrupts you? Why you break into a cold sweat at the slightest criticism even though you're smiling? Why your thoughts turn into blades when someone makes you feel small? It's because you don't know how to be at peace with yourself. Because you confuse calm with repression. Because you've spent years silencing your shadow instead of integrating it. And what you repress doesn't disappear. It grows stronger, more dangerous, more desperate to be seen. This video isn't here to teach you how to breathe deeply, or to repeat mantras, or to sip green tea while imagining that the universe is conspiring in your favor. This video is a mirror, one of those that doesn't distort what it reflects, one that shows you the part of yourself that can't be posted on Instagram, the part that trembles, that burns, that swallows words, tasting like blood. Do you really want to remain calm in the face of confrontation? Then prepare to die, not physically, but psychologically, because you'll have to kill that version of yourself that gets dragged around by rage disguised as reason. That version that defends itself by attacking, that screams so it doesn't get devoured, that constantly justifies itself because it doesn't know how to stay silent. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And do you know what your fate is if you do nothing? To always react like an animal, like a victim of your most primal instincts. True power doesn't lie in defeating others. It lies in not letting others defeat you from within. This is not just another video about self-esteem. It's not another piece of content meant to make you feel good for 5 minutes, only to explode again on the ones you love the most. This is a descent, and not everyone comes back from it. Because not everyone is willing to face what they carry inside. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is tired. Tired of pretending everything is fine. Tired of making excuses. Tired of losing control precisely when you need it the most. Today, you're not stepping into the labyrinth because I say so. You're stepping in because your soul is already there, wandering, calling out for you to finally show up and face it. So don't look away. Don't try to calm yourself. Don't breathe deeply in an attempt to soothe the discomfort. Do the exact opposite. Let yourself feel the vertigo, the tension, the uneasiness pressing on your chest, because that very discomfort is the doorway. And whether you like it or not, you're about to walk through it. Are you ready to meet the version of yourself that shows up when stillness is the only thing standing between you and the abyss? Don't leave just yet. If you think that the real danger lies in your anger, then you're still missing the core of the problem. Anger is just the tip of the iceberg. The real fire, the one that burns everything down, begins long before you raise your voice. It begins in silence, in those moments when you betray yourself quietly, when you say, "It's fine," even though every part of you is screaming that it's not. When you say yes to things you don't want, when you compromise your boundaries, when you swallow your truth again and again, once, twice, 100 times, until that false calmness turns into a ticking time bomb that no one sees coming. And then when the explosion happens, they ask you, why did you lash out like that? Why did you overreact? Why did you say something so out of line? But what no one ever asks is, how long had you been pretending everything was okay? Can you see it now? The people who boast the most about having self-control are often just one small trigger away from collapsing. Because their calm is a mask, a carefully constructed illusion. And the most dangerous thing about a mask is that it even fools the one who's wearing it. Carl Jung once said, "The self is a necessary mask," but he also warned that if you identify too closely with that mask, you lose touch with who you are underneath. And that's exactly what happens every time you choose calmness, not as a triumph, but as a disguise. Do you understand now? This isn't about suppressing your emotions. This is about integrating them. This is about realizing that your anger, your fear, your impulsive urges, they're not enemies, they're messengers. They are fractured parts of you that have been silenced, overlooked, neglected. People don't lose control during confrontation because they're weak. They lose control because they're carrying an unresolved war inside of them, a war that no one on the outside can see. And often, it's a war they themselves have stopped listening to. And here's a truth that may sting. Most of your confrontations aren't with others. They're with yourself. Every time you stay silent when you want to speak. Every time you agree to something that wounds you. Every time you smile just to keep the peace. You're not avoiding conflict, you're creating it inside yourself. And those are the confrontations that do the most damage because they're invisible. No one sees them, but you feel them, you carry them. And one day, without knowing how or why, you find yourself irritated by everything. You don't understand why small things make you explode, why you're exhausted, resentful, anxious. You say you want peace? Start there. Stop running from your small internal wars. Face them, because what you refuse to face doesn't disappear. It rots, and what rots eventually erupts in the worst ways. And now we come to something else no one likes to admit. There's always that one person, that one type of person who pushes your buttons like no one else. That one personality that triggers your ugliest shadows, your deepest rage, your worst instincts. That's not a coincidence. That person is a mirror. They reflect something inside you that you haven't resolved yet. It's not really about them. It's about what they awaken in you. Maybe they represent the voice that shamed you as a child, the authority that silenced you, the rejection that broke you, the betrayal you never healed from. Maybe they act freely in the way you've never allowed yourself to. Maybe they expose the boundaries you've never learned to defend. Either way, they show you what you still haven't made peace with. And that's why you react with such intensity. Not because they're powerful, but because they touch a wound that's still open. And that's the invitation here. Not to keep pretending you're fine. Not to chase an artificial version of calm. But to walk into the fire of your own truth. To confront the parts of you that are tired of being ignored. Because real peace doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from integration, from listening to what hurts, from giving space to what you feel, from understanding that your emotions aren't flaws, they're signals, they're sacred messengers guiding you back to yourself. So stay with the discomfort, stay with the tension. Let it teach you, let it guide you, because that's where the healing begins, not in the silence, but in the courage to finally break it. It might be someone who dominates you, who makes you feel small, or someone who manipulates you, who makes you doubt yourself. Pay close attention. Every confrontation that shakes your balance is a mirror, and the more uncomfortable it makes you, the more it reveals a part of yourself that you refuse to face. Don't resist that discomfort. Use it. Follow the thread. Trace it back to its origin. Because the real enemy is never the other person. The real enemy is the echo that person activates inside you. Now let me ask you something. How many times have you won an argument only to feel empty afterward? How many times have you had the final word and yet still lost your peace of mind? That's what happens when you walk into a confrontation without truly knowing yourself. It's not a battle of ideas. It's a clash of wounded egos, yours and theirs. And in that kind of war, even the winner loses. Because true calm cannot be imposed. It cannot be negotiated. It cannot be performed. It can only be reached. And you reach it only when you no longer feel the need to prove anything. When you've made peace with the darkest corners of yourself. Let's talk about silence now. But not the superficial kind of silence. The real one, the internal one. Silence that has nothing to do with keeping your mouth shut, and everything to do with not reacting internally. Because true calm doesn't start on your lips. It starts in your judgment. Do you know how hard it is to witness a provocation and not immediately assign it a meaning? To face someone's aggression and not interpret it as a personal attack? That's where true strength is forged. When you learn to create space between what happens and how you choose to feel about it, that space, that brief second of separation, is where your freedom lives. And yes, it's difficult. You've been trained to react, not to respond. You live in a culture that glorifies speed, clever comebacks, and sharp retorts. But the sharpest mind is not the one that speaks first. It's the one that doesn't rush, the one that doesn't fall into the trap laid by others. Carl Jung once said, "He who looks outside dreams, he who who looks inside awakens. And waking up hurts, because you begin to see everything you used to avoid. You see your pride. You see your need to always be right. You see your old wound, the one that cries out every time you feel unheard. You begin to notice the root of your anxiety hiding in every argument. But you also start to see something more, something you can actually choose. And that choice, that conscious decision not to feed the storm, that is the closest thing to real power. Do you want proof that you're growing? Look at how you react when someone falsely accuses you, when someone misinterprets you, when someone mocks you. Do you immediately jump to your own defense? Do you raise your voice so that your truth can be heard? Or can you remain grounded without needing to convince anyone of anything? That's where your growth is measured, not by what you achieve, but by what you no longer feel the need to prove. And now, let's go deeper into another shadowy place: your need to stay calm. So often, that calm doesn't come from wisdom. It comes from fear. Fear of being rejected, fear of seeming weak, fear of not being enough. And so you become an actor, a flawless performer of serenity. But inside, you're screaming. What would happen if you stopped performing? If, for the first time, you stopped trying to prove anything? If you simply allowed yourself to feel exactly what you feel and observe it without judgment? Not to control it, but to understand it, to name it. Because the problem is not feeling anger. The problem is not knowing what to do with it. This is the core of it all. Emotional management is not about repression, nor is it about spilling everything without filter. It's about understanding. And in order to understand yourself, you must stop lying to yourself. You must stop saying you're fine when you're not. You must stop using calmness as an excuse to avoid the conflicts you actually need to face. Not every confrontation is bad. Some are essential. Some actually save you. Some are the only way to set boundaries. And boundaries, whether people like them or not, are one of the purest forms of self-love. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, don't think of staying calm like it's some performance for the outside world. Ask yourself, is my calm a way of avoiding myself, or is it a way of affirming myself? Because there's a calm that is submission, and another that is mastery. And only you can decide which one you're practicing. And no, we're not done yet. There's something else. Something no one really tells you. Keeping your composure in the middle of confrontation isn't always about having the right words. Sometimes it's about knowing when to leave. Because there are battles that are never meant to be won by fighting. They're won by walking away. Not because you're running, but because you've grown. Because you finally realized that not every conflict deserves your energy. Some confrontations exist for one reason only: to steal your presence. And when you learn how to walk away without drama, you're not losing. You're choosing to protect your essence. And you know what's the most powerful part of all this? That some people will mistake your calm for weakness until they realize you're the only one in the room who doesn't need to raise their voice to own the space. This isn't about applause. This isn't about being better than anyone else. This is about real self-control. And real self-control isn't rigidity. It's conscious flexibility. It's moving like water, strong but fluid, grounded but flowing. Because like Bruce Lee said, be water, my friend. And no, that wasn't a marketing line. That was a warning. Those who don't learn how to flow, break. But you didn't come here to break. You came here to wake up. And if you're still listening, that's not by accident. Something in you chose to stay. Not out of boredom, not out of habit, but because this message touched a layer most people avoid. We're no longer talking about just staying calm. We're talking about transforming your entire existence, because calm, that's just the surface. What you're really learning is to not sell your soul, to not trade your inner peace for the cheap hit of a reactive emotion. You're training the invisible muscle of awareness, the one no one sees, but it holds everything together. And here comes the most powerful part. When you change the way you respond to conflict, conflict changes the way it shows up in your life. It's almost like the universe takes notice, like the battles begin to avoid you, not because you're afraid, but because you're no longer fuel for chaos. The fire can't burn what no longer ignites. Will there still be confrontation? Absolutely. But now, you won't be available to be dragged into it. Not because you think you're superior, but because you know yourself more deeply. Because you've gone into your own darkness and come back with something that can't be bought, can't be acted, and can't be faked. Presence. And that changes everything. Calm is not the destination. It's a sign that you've awakened, that you no longer react from your wounds, but from your choices, that you don't move from fear anymore, but from direction. And do you know what that makes you? Dangerous. Dangerous to manipulators, dangerous to chaos seekers, dangerous to those who thrive on noise. Because now you are silence that cuts, presence that weighs heavy, peace that makes others uncomfortable. When someone who's integrated their shadow sits across from you and doesn't flinch, something inside others starts to tremble. They don't know why, but they feel it, because that calm isn't weakness. It's the echo of someone who has died and come back, wiser, deeper, untouchable. So here's the ending. If something like this can even have an end, don't stay calm for others. Don't do it to keep things easy. Don't do it to look strong. Do it for you, because you no longer need to explode to feel alive, because you no longer need to win to feel worthy, because you no longer need to be right to be at peace. And if someone doesn't understand that, let them go. Not everyone is ready for the kind of serenity that confronts and disarms. If this message resonated with you, don't just leave like it meant nothing. This channel isn't for people who just want feel-good fluff. This is for those ready to leave behind the weak, programmed, tamed version of themselves and step fully into transformation. Subscribe now if you're ready to keep digging into truths that might be uncomfortable, but will set you free. And hit the notification bell, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss. And if you want to leave a mark, comment below. Silence is my armor. Awareness is my sword. That's how I'll know you made it all the way here. That you're not just one more voice in the crowd. And now, yes, I'm signing off, but not with a goodbye. That'd be too predictable. I'm leaving you with a warning. From today on, be careful what you think right before you react. Because now, you know. Now, you've seen it. And once you've seen it, there's no going back. The real confrontation doesn't happen out there. It happens within. And once that starts, the calm you conquer is irreversible. I'll see you when no one else dares to look. In the shadow, at the edge, in the depth. Until next time. We live in a world that demands immediate reactions. A comment on social media, a disapproving glance, a criticism disguised as advice, and without realizing it, we lose control. We become puppets of our environment. Everything affects us. Everything disturbs us. Everything pulls us out of our center. But what if I told you there's a deeper power than the speed to react? What if, instead of reacting, You learned to observe, understand, and transcend. Carl Jung, one of the great masters of the human soul, understood that true freedom is not about reacting, it's about choosing. Because every time you react, you give away your power. But when you choose from a place of awareness, you reclaim your essence. Calmness is not the absence of conflict, it is the presence of clarity. Can you imagine walking through life with a quiet mind, a serene inner voice, and a firm will, even when the world around you is trembling? That is possible. And in this journey, we're going to explore how to achieve it. It's not an easy path, but it is transformative. To stop reacting to everything doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you've learned to filter what truly matters. It means you choose your battles wisely. You no longer waste your energy on empty arguments, and you no longer get wounded by the words of people who don't know your worth. The first step is understanding this. Every reaction is a mirror. If someone manages to make you lose your temper, it's not them who holds the power. It's you who handed it over. It's your wound, your story, your pain. That's what speaks when you react without thinking. Jung said it clearly. What you deny controls you. What you accept transforms you. When you don't accept your emotions, they dominate you. But when you recognize them without judgment, you start gaining the ability to choose how to act. And here's a powerful truth. Not everything deserves your energy. There are situations designed solely to steal your peace. People who throw out provocations like bait, hoping you'll bite. But you are not a fish hungry for validation. You are a conscious being, capable of discerning what is important from what is unnecessary. Training your calmness is training your soul. And like any form of training, it requires consistency, courage, and direction. In a world overstimulated by noise, drama, and urgency, the most rebellious act is to remain calm. While others scream, you choose silence. While others react, you take a deep breath. While everything burns, you stand firm in your center. And from there, you choose. This video isn't just another piece of content. It's an invitation to reclaim your inner power, to live with intention, to stop being a leaf carried by the wind, and become the tree that stays rooted, even in the storm. And if this message resonates with you, stay until the end. Because what comes next might not only change how you react, it could shift the way you live. Many people believe calmness is a trait you're born with. I'm just impulsive, they say. I can't help it. But that's not true. Calmness isn't some exclusive gift. It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed. The problem is, we've been conditioned to react, not to reflect. Since childhood, we were taught to defend ourselves, to respond quickly, to never let things slide. But almost no one taught us how to breathe before speaking, how to pause before deciding, how to observe before judging. And that's where the secret lies, in the pause. The pause is that sacred space between stimulus and response. And in that tiny moment, your true power is revealed. Reacting is automatic, but responding with awareness, that is an act of mastery. Jung understood that the unconscious rules our lives when we are unaware of it, that everything we fail to face within ourselves, we project onto the world outside. That's why, when something irritates you, it's not just about what's happening out there, it's about what you haven't resolved in here. I'll give you a simple example. Imagine someone says something offensive to you. If you're at peace with yourself, you can see their words for what they are. Just an expression of that person's inner world, not a threat to yours. But if you have unhealed wounds, Those words strike like an arrow because they touch a pain that you haven't dealt with yet. So, what can you do? First, cultivate the habit of inner silence. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't need to have an opinion on every topic. True strength is in restraint, in feeling the urge to speak and choosing not to, in listening without needing to dominate, in letting the noise pass without letting it carry you away. Second, start observing your triggers. What kind of situations make you lose control? Which people easily throw you off balance? Write it down. Look at it without guilt. Each trigger is not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity for healing. It's not about changing the other person. It's about knowing yourself better. Every time something unsettles you, it points directly to a place inside that still needs your attention. And third, question your need to be right. So often, we react because we feel that staying silent would mean defeat, as if not defending ourselves automatically makes us the loser. But silence, in reality, can be one of the most powerful responses. True strength often lies in what you choose not to say. The one who no longer needs to raise their voice has already mastered the moment. Remember this: reaction is slavery. Choice is freedom. Carl Jung emphasized that self-knowledge is the only path to liberation. And to truly know yourself, you must learn to recognize when your anger is valid and when it's just the lingering echo of an old wound you haven't healed. Every emotional eruption isn't always about the present. It's often about the past, knocking on your door, asking to be seen. So next time you feel like something is about to overwhelm you, pause, breathe deeply, close your eyes if you can, and ask yourself, is it worth it? If the answer is no, let it go. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Your energy is far more valuable than any argument. Don't waste it. And if these words are resonating with you, if they're helping you regain a sense of calm or clarity, consider sharing this message. Someone out there might need it just as much as you do. A single moment of insight, a single message could change someone's day or even their life. One of the greatest mistakes we make is thinking that reacting means we're strong. But in truth, someone who reacts to everything is someone who can be easily shaken by anything. Real strength is in the stillness, in standing your ground even when everything around you pushes you to fall. Carl Jung described it with remarkable clarity. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. What does that mean? It means that most of our automatic reactions aren't conscious decisions. They are deeply ingrained habits, patterns we inherited, unresolved traumas we carry, silent memories we never confronted. That's why cultivating self-awareness is essential. Start observing yourself like a neutral witness. Don't judge, just watch. What do you feel? What do you think? How do you act? What happens inside you when someone challenges your ideas? What do you feel when things don't go your way? Every reaction has a root, and when you find that root, you gain freedom. There are people who live constantly on the edge, ready to explode at the smallest mistake, as if any criticism threatens their worth. They can't tolerate being questioned. They live as though they're under attack. But the problem is not the world around them. It's the unresolved tension within themselves. They haven't made peace with their own inner world. Calmness is not something you're born with. It's the result of mental training. And training your mind doesn't mean avoiding feelings. It means learning not to get stuck in them. It's not about bottling things up. It's not about pretending nothing hurts. It's about responding with awareness instead of impulse. You can set boundaries without raising your voice. You can speak your truth without losing control. You can walk away from a conflict without feeling like you've lost. This is where the concept of emotional dignity comes into play. Emotional dignity means knowing that your worth is not up for negotiation in a fight. It means you don't have to enter every battle you're invited to. It means choosing to conserve your energy for what really matters. And if you truly want to become the kind of person who chooses instead of reacts, here are 3 powerful practices that will help you get there. First, conscious breathing. Before you respond, pause and take 3 slow, deep breaths. This small act activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body that calms you down, and it helps bring you back into control. Second, reflective writing. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to write down the situations that took you out of balance. What triggered you? How did you respond? And how could you have handled it differently? Over time, this trains your awareness. It helps you anticipate your emotional patterns and begin to shift them consciously. Third, the pause. If something upsets you, do not respond immediately. Give yourself space. Take a few minutes, an hour, even a full day if necessary. Reactivity thrives on urgency, but urgency is often a trap. Not everything that upsets you deserves an instant reply. Sometimes, the real act of power is choosing to observe, to understand, and to release. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. Learning to pause is not a weakness. It's mastery. Because the more you learn to choose your response, the more you reclaim your life from automatic patterns. That's the beginning of true freedom. That's the quiet power of a self-aware mind. In Jung's own words, you can know every theory and master every technique, but when it comes to touching a human soul, be only another human soul. And that applies to how you treat yourself too. Treat yourself with humanity, with compassion, with patience. Every step you take toward inner calm is a step toward your inner freedom. And if these words are resonating with something inside you, if you feel this message has the power to change lives, give it weight, share it. Someone out there might be waiting for a message like this to begin rewriting their story. Maybe right now, you feel like trying to control your reactions is a losing battle. Maybe you've tried to stay calm, but suddenly, you snap. You promise yourself you'll be different. But then it happens again. One wrong word, one misread gesture, one bad day, and everything falls apart. Let me tell you something that matters. Transformation isn't a straight path. There are steps forward, steps backward, good days, and days that shake your foundation. But what truly counts is your decision to keep walking toward a better version of yourself. Carl Jung understood deeply that no one becomes whole unless they integrate their shadow. What does that mean? It means it's not enough to just want to be calm or balanced. You have to face everything inside you that you don't want to see. Your repressed anger, your insecurities, your fears, your need for control. Because as long as you refuse to look at that side of you, it will continue to rule your life from the shadows. You can't heal what you aren't willing to see. Many times, our reactions come from a place of constant defense, like the world is a battlefield where we have to protect ourselves all the time. But living like that is exhausting. Every situation turns into a threat, every comment into an attack, every disagreement into a war. The secret lies in changing the way you interpret what happens to you. You can't always control what the world throws at you, but you can always control how you receive it. If someone criticizes you, you can take it as a personal attack, or you can take it as a chance to build confidence. If someone ignores you, you can feel rejected, or you can remind yourself that your worth is not measured by someone else's attention. That kind of inner freedom can't be bought or faked. It's trained. And here's where a powerful tool comes in, one that very few people actually use: proactive visualization. Before you enter a difficult conversation, before you face a tense situation, close your eyes and picture yourself remaining calm. Imagine yourself breathing deeply, speaking clearly, and walking away from the situation with dignity. This practice trains your mind to respond the way you want to, not the way you've been conditioned to. And if one day you fail, don't punish yourself. Learn from it, adjust, and try again. No one becomes wise overnight. Emotional maturity is built through small victories over yourself. Every time you choose not to react, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Also, start surrounding yourself with people who nurture your calm, not those who constantly challenge it. Your environment matters too. It's not about isolating yourself, but being intentional with the energies you allow near you. And above all, take care of your inner dialogue. Many of your external reactions reflect what you're telling yourself when no one else is listening. If you're harsh with yourself, you'll be harsh with others. If you treat yourself with compassion, you'll treat the world with more patience. Jung said it with grace. He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens. This is your moment to awaken, to stop being a slave to every trigger and start becoming the master of your choices. And if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready. This isn't just another video. This is the beginning of a quiet revolution. The revolution of those who no longer want to live reacting, but choosing. Now that you know you can choose between reacting or staying calm, there's something even deeper you need to understand. Your energy is your most valuable asset. Every time you react, you spend energy, mental, emotional, even physical. And if you take a moment to observe your daily life, you'll realize that much of your energy is spent on things that don't deserve it. Pointless arguments, obsessive thoughts, social media comparisons, misunderstandings. So why drain yourself while the world keeps spinning? The real question is, do you want to keep investing your energy in what depletes you or in what builds you? Carl Jung understood that true balance is achieved when you redirect your energy inward toward your own growth, not by fighting the outside world, but by transforming your internal world. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming wise. Wisdom isn't about not feeling. It's about feeling everything without being dragged by it. It's the ability to witness chaos without becoming a part of it. It's hearing hurtful words and understanding they reflect not who you are, but who the other person is. It's knowing when to speak and when to walk away with grace. And that wisdom is built with a habit very few people practice: managing your thoughts. Your thoughts are like seeds. If you plant thoughts of fear, insecurity, and judgment, that's what will grow inside you. But if you nurture thoughts of understanding, strength, and calm, little by little, your mind will begin to operate differently. Most people react because they've never learned to pause the mind before the body takes over. A thought arises, an emotion flares up, and the body responds. You slam your hand on the table, raise your voice, make impulsive decisions, and then regret it. That's why it's essential to learn how to interrupt that cycle. Next time something upsets you, try this small practice. Quietly name what you're feeling. I'm feeling anger. I'm feeling frustration. This activates your frontal lobe, the rational part of your brain, and takes the power away from the impulsive reaction. Then repeat, I can choose how to respond. It may sound simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Calmness is trained in the small things, in waiting, in traffic, in awkward conversations, in your own mistakes, in the mistakes of others, in the comment you didn't expect, in the message that never arrived. Every moment is a new chance to choose between acting from impulse or from awareness. And here's where your environment also plays a key role. Who do you share your energy with? What kind of content do you consume? What conversations do you feed? Jung once said, "Show me someone who consumes chaos, and I'll show you someone living in inner war." So ask yourself, are you feeding your calm or your conflict? One strategic way to protect your peace is to create daily rituals of silence and clarity. You don't need a lot of time. Just 5 or 10 minutes alone with yourself. No screens, no distractions. Just you, your breath, and your thoughts. That space will become your refuge, your foundation, your root. And if this message is helping you see life with fresh eyes, consider leaving a comment that says, I choose calm. That way, we'll know you're walking this conscious path along with others who've also chosen to change their story from within. Now that you're building a new relationship with yourself, it's time to understand something fundamental. Calm isn't a destination. It's a daily practice. You won't reach a moment where everything is fixed forever. There will always be challenges. There will always be people trying to provoke you. There will always be situations that test you. But that's not failure. That's life. The difference lies in how you choose to live it. Carl Jung believed the goal of life is not perfection, but wholeness. It's not about getting rid of intense emotions, but integrating them. It's about recognizing your shadow without letting it dominate you, feeling rage without letting it rule your actions, accepting that you're human and still choosing peace. That is emotional maturity, and it doesn't develop overnight. But there's one principle that can speed up your process: radical responsibility. Radical responsibility means you take 100% ownership for what you do with what happens to you. Not for what happens, but for your response to it. You can't control if someone yells at you, but you can control whether you respond with calm or with more fire. And this is where many people get lost. They confuse calm with weakness. They think if you don't strike back immediately, you're allowing disrespect. But that's not true. Calm is not submission. It's wisdom. Calm is not passivity. It's strategy. Calm is power under control. One of the most powerful practices to maintain that power is intelligent, emotional detachment. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you stop attaching yourself to what you can't control, to opinions, to outcomes, to judgments, to expectations. Detachment is not coldness, it's freedom. When you learn to release what doesn't depend on you, you free yourself from burdens that were never yours to carry. And that inner freedom builds a different kind of confidence. A quiet, steady confidence that doesn't need to prove anything. It's the confidence of someone who knows themselves, who listens to themselves, who doesn't need to win every argument to feel worthy. Have you noticed how some people radiate peace without even speaking a word? That's not a coincidence, it's a consequence. It's the result of years choosing not to be dragged into chaos, years training their mind, their body, and their spirit to act from their center. You can become one of those people, not tomorrow, not in some ideal future, but by starting today, because every moment gives you the chance to choose again. Even if yesterday you reacted poorly, even if you lost control, even if you got carried away, today you can choose differently. It's not about erasing the past, it's about learning from it. It's not about avoiding conflict, but learning to walk through it with dignity. And if you want to anchor everything you've learned so far, make this promise to yourself. From now on, I won't waste my energy on things that don't build me. From now on, I choose to respond with awareness. Write that phrase somewhere visible. Remember it when emotion starts to take over. Read it when you feel like you're about to lose control. Because that phrase is not just an affirmation, it's a declaration of power. You've made it this far not by chance, but because at some point in your life, you decided you were done reacting to everything. You realized you deserve more than emotional outbursts, more than pointless arguments, more than thoughts that steal your peace. You decided it was time to be the one guiding your life, not your impulses. And that decision, even if silent, is deeply transformative. Carl Jung left us with an unforgettable teaching. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. You've begun that awakening. You've chosen to look within, to understand yourself, to heal, and from there, to build a more conscious life. The path to calm is not perfect. It's not about how many times you manage to stay calm or avoid reacting. It's about how many times you're willing to try again after failing. Real strength isn't measured by perfection, but by your persistence. Every single time you choose silence instead of yelling, reflection instead of impulsive reaction, compassion instead of judgment, even if no one notices, even if no one applauds you, you are winning. You are evolving in the most valuable way possible. You are growing in peace. And that inner peace, when it's genuine, begins to affect everything around you. It's subtle at first, like a quiet breeze that softens the atmosphere, but soon it transforms your life. Your relationships start to flow more easily. Your decisions become clearer. Your days feel lighter. Why? Because you're no longer reacting out of old wounds, habits, or fear. You're no longer on autopilot. You've started to act consciously from a place of freedom. And that, right there, is true freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever you want without consequence. Real freedom is being able to pause, to breathe, to think, to feel the pull of anger or pride and still choose the higher path. It's saying, yes, I could scream, I could blame, I could strike back. But instead, you ask yourself, what outcome do I really want from this moment? And then you act with intention, not just emotion. That is power. The power to choose your words carefully. The power to select your battles wisely. The power to protect your energy as if it were sacred. Because it is. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you're not just helping yourself. You're healing something much bigger. You're becoming the end of a cycle that maybe started generations before you. You're not just reacting, you're rewriting. And here's the beautiful part, this serenity that you're cultivating. It's not just for your own peace. It's a gift to the world. Every time you break the chain of reaction, every time you respond with grace instead of rage, every time you choose to listen rather than attack, you are shifting the energy around you. You're making it safer to breathe near you. You're becoming someone people can open up to, someone people can be real with, someone who holds space instead of demanding it. That's your new role now. Not the person who always has a comeback, not the one who argues for sport, not the one who constantly seeks to win or prove a point, but the person who knows how to pause, the one who waits for the right moment, not to dominate, but to elevate, The person who knows that being right is less important than being at peace. And if this message has stirred something within you, if even a small part of your soul is whispering, "This is what I needed to hear," then don't let these words stay just within you. Let them ripple outward. Share them with someone else who might be on the same journey, someone who's also searching for their calm. Be a part of the chain that breaks the old ways. Be the link that passes on awareness instead of conflict. Because the world already has enough people who scream, who accuse, who defend. What we need, what the world is starving for, is people who inspire through stillness, people who lead through quiet strength. This is the beginning of a new chapter in your life, a chapter where your identity is no longer shaped by how quickly or loudly you react, but by how consciously you choose. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your anxiety or your impatience. You are the one who watches them, who holds them, who decides what to do with them. And in that awareness, in that space between stimulus and response, there lies your greatest power. Thank you for coming this far. Thank you for choosing to sit with these words. Now take that energy with you. Let it move through your actions, your tone, your choices. Step into the world not as someone ready to fight, but as someone ready to understand. Choose calm, again and again, until it becomes your natural way of being, until it becomes your gift to the world.